Big news over the weekend brought the shocking news of the death of Jeffrey Epstein. The former financier was found dead in his jail cell in Lower Manhattan on Saturday morning, about 6:30 in the morning after an apparent suicide. But Epstein's death isn't ending questions about his sizable wealth, where it came from, of course, and how it was ultimately used. For more on the investigation, we're joined now by Kate Kelly, New York Times reporter and a CNBC contributor. And what a weekend it has been.
What a weekend.
The story does not end here, clearly, but tell us sort of what happens next.
Well, a variety of things. I mean, first of all, I think first and foremost, we're waiting for a detailed report from the medical examiner, who has said they need to spend a few more days getting some test results. I think we assume that they're checking for, chemicals or drugs in his blood, but it's not clear. They've already performed the physical autopsy.
There are so many conspiracy theories, we should say, about this.
Sure.
Is there any evidence so far, or any real suggestion that this was anything but a suicide?
Foul play, anything else involved?
I mean, there's no indication of that per se. The reason, though, as you guys know, why there are so many conspiracy theories is there were so many people that appeared to have so much to lose if Epstein were to sing, right? So you've got 24 figures from international politics and finance who were supposedly people who rode on the plane, people who visited the island, people who consorted with him generally. We don't know for sure that they were clients in the sort of sexual sense, but they certainly were around him. So the question is what might have come forward. I think we don't entirely know. There was more information that came out Friday with all the unsealed documents as part of the Virginia Jeffrey Ghislaine Maxwell litigation. But to my read, and I'm hearing this from colleagues who have sifted through the thousands of pages, I haven't looked at them all myself, but it's a lot of the names you've already seen, and we have to bear in mind, some of these are unsubstantiated. They're claims.
And do we know where
proven.
Maxwell is, by the way?
I don't.
Nobody seems to know where she is. No, because
I
think that this is going to be the next leg of the investigation, because they're going to have to try to find her, and she may very well not be in the United States.
Either that or, Kate, I assume people can still audit the money trail.
Right. So in answer to your original question, yes, I think there will continue to be a pursuit of his finances and trying to understand them. Already we've seen coverage this morning from the Wall Street Journal, for example, about Mark Epstein, his closest living kin, who also had an opaque sort of financial situation, and the little dots in the pointillism that we can see suggest he had perhaps financial distress because he had a lien, but also that he had large charitable contributions, which suggested wealth.
Do we know if Jeffrey Epstein had a will, and what is the normal process when someone is due to face trial and something like this happens?
So I don't know the status of his will in any sort of reportable way. What I have heard, and not corroborated, is that there was some sort of a will or estate planning, and there were a couple of heirs identified. But that's not something I know for sure.
I can't believe this guy has not done estate planning, given all of the tax arbitrage work.
But even if he has, is that up in the air while investigations?
I think that's up in the air, and I think some of these victims have said they're going to file civil litigation against the estate, so there's going to be that to contend with. Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. attorney here, has said they're going to continue to pursue this case. They want more victims to come forward. So certainly they'll be looking at the financial piece, because that's how
For the people who have ties to him, though, what is the greater risk to them, that the estate ends up getting administered, or that the estate is frozen while this investigation goes on?
I would assume further investigation is the risk to people if they have something that they want to hide.
Do you believe the Les Wexner statement last week, that in 2007 he realized that all of this money was misappropriated, or some of the money was misappropriated, and we're only finding out about that now? And that it appears, depending on how you think this money was moved, that there might have been some kind of settlement later with some kind of Epstein charity.
Right, and the Wexner comment is that there were certain investments made, and the upside of those investments accrued over time and was paid out in due course.
And if true, why he didn't say this in 2007 publicly?
I mean, I think...
Unless he was trying to protect himself, because, I mean, I was trying to understand the sort of psychology of what may or may not be happening, unless you think he's just throwing him under the bus now, because he can.
It strikes me that there needs to be a full and complete audit of all these financial transactions. They will be able to do that if they want to pursue it.
Right.
And you can't hide from the numbers. The numbers are there. The bank accounts are there. The transfers actually occurred. People actually had to sign documents. All those things can be reviewed and looked at, and I suspect they will be.
Right.
And then we'll know, because we need some transparency here.
Sure. I mean, I think the broad storyline, Andrew, is that Wexner learned that Epstein was not someone he wanted to have managing his financial affairs in or around the aughts or 2007 or so when he broke ties, maybe earlier. We don't fully know. And he wanted to just end that relationship as quietly as he could and not bring further scrutiny.
You'd normally go to the police. You'd say, this guy stole my money.
Sure. But if you're embarrassed by an association or you know you have even an inkling that there's impropriety going on, you don't want, let's say it's only financial impropriety, as he said, you don't want that to get out into the public domain when you're running a public company and you have shareholders who are trusting you.
But
that's
Kate,
not a story you want to emphasize.
Do you think that given the situation that we have here, that there's any sense that the public prosecutors or state prosecutors will not actually look at the detailed financial transactions?
My sense is that they are. And one thing in the Times story today is that J.P. Morgan and Deutsche Bank, who were his primary private wealth managers for, a 20-plus year period, are combing through documents that prosecutors have asked Deutsche for sort of a transaction-by-transaction breakdown. Now, there obviously are huge questions as to how far they're going to take this in light of the man's death. But at the moment, anyway, the posturing is we're going forward full steam. These record reviews are underway at both banks. And I would imagine that prosecutors are going to want to make something of all this effort.
Well, whether he's alive or not, obviously he's not, the participants involved in the money transfers are still culpable for the things that happened.
Sure.
And so the banks and any other persons or entities that actually moved that money have responsibility.
Do you think there's going to be a big compliance issue? Do you think someone's heads are going to roll within the banks?
I don't see how it shouldn't.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what will happen, but this is a situation where there are a large number of financial transactions. There's a large number of people involved. People actually had to understand why the money was being used. Those people are still alive. Those rules are still broken. If, in fact, they were, I think, as Kate points out, there's going to be, quite a bit of investigation here.
Well, and Deutsche Bank is already under scrutiny for money laundering issues and making sure that they are adequately vetting and reporting improper client activity. So this is kind of, in a large way, part of that wheelhouse. And apparently the early indications are that during that banking relationship they had with Epstein from 2013 to 2019, I mean, it was really only just severed recently, they have reason to believe he was using the money for illegal means.
Kate Kelly, what a story.
It's quite an unfolding story, and it will take dozens of journalists, I think, to get to the bottom of it. But I'm happy to be on the bus, as it were. Yes.
We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.